What's up, guys? Welcome back to the That's So Dev podcast. My name is Dev. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I appreciate you. Genuinely, we have some tea to get into today. Now, before we get into the tea, make sure you go and follow me at That's So Dev on Twitter, Instagram, and literally everywhere else, child. Okay? Now, we got some real serious tea to get into, y'all. I am annoyed. I'm so annoyed. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the music industry is a very nasty place. We know that, right? In literally every direction, the music industry is nasty. And, you know, things happen in the industry where so-and-so may happen behind the scenes, and now a production has to shift their dates, right? So let me give you an example, I suppose. Let's even say, okay, the Billboard Music Awards are now going to take place in November, right? Because maybe they're behind schedule from the prior year where they had to push back their award ceremonies. You remember the pandemic is a very weird time with everything. Everything had to shift after the pandemic, literally, especially award shows. So, you know, the Billboard Music Awards are in November now. The AMAs are like, okay, so now we're going to take the Billboard Music Awards slot and we're going to go, you know, around the next year when the Billboard Music Awards are usually in May. Well, you know, when that happens, it shifts the nominations. It shifts the eligibility, right? So what may have been eligible prior to it moving may not be eligible now. And I find that to be very insane because, well, they just can't change the date that the song came out, or, you know what I mean? They can't change what has already happened. If an artist has already released the music, then they've released the music. Like, if you're going to change eligibility, you need to make sure that anybody who had established any sort of content prior to that changing should still be eligible. All of that to come to the point of the Grammys, right? So the Grammys have decided to shift their eligibility. And they've been doing that kind of sort of the past 2 or 3 years, especially since the pandemic. We've been seeing them shift heavily. They're another one of those award shows. And I'm seeing how this is beginning to impact artists. Specifically, Tate McRae. If you are literally listening to this podcast, you know what I'm going to be talking about. This is about Tate McRae in the Grammys. And, you know, there are a lot of people who will probably be like, well, Tate McRae, well, she just came in, she just knew, blah, 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 and all the extra BS, you know, as to why she may not be deserving of consideration for a Grammy, right? You'll hear a billion people tell you why that shouldn't be the case. But the reality of it is that she has seen a substantial breakout over the last year. That can't be denied. Greedy is a hit that not everybody gets. That is a fact, you know? And seeing what her album did, I think her album exceeded expectations in regards to the performance, for sure. I personally think that the album was rushed. And that is a fact. It's not something I think. That's a fact, you know? When we hear the stories of, oh, she wrote X's this fast, but the reason why she had to do that, I mean, Queen, but she had to do that because they wanted to fast track getting this album out, right? So I'm sitting here thinking about, okay, so 2 things that I don't like, and they stem from her team, right? Who decided to give her a release date for the back end of the year? Who decided to give Tate McRae a release date around Christmas time. There's no time for your era to survive. And literally, unless you are Nicki Minaj or some type of artist that can hold your own, you see how Pink Friday 2 held its own during Christmas, right? It still had the #1 song on Apple Music during Christmas time. So, unless you're an artist like that, well, you're going to get drowned out by Christmas songs. That's a fact. We see it happen all the time. We see so many wonderfully well-crafted songs go recurrent because of Christmas songs. They just wipe bitches out now. They do. And I'm just, in my head, it's like, you set her up. You literally set this girl up to fail with this album. And it's not that this album failed. It's that the album isn't what it could have been. It's that we have to be serious. They lacked on the marketing. They did 110%. When I look at the release and the rollout of the album, we have Greedy. We go instantly right into X's. You know, X's comes very quick off the heels off of Greedy, which isn't a terrible idea. I mean, all things considered, they're getting this album out now. When else are they going to release it if the album's literally coming out within like the next 2 months or something like that? You know? So I'm like, girl, no. And let me tell you what would have been the best option. Greedy was a sustainable hit through the holiday. There was no need to rush X's. There was no need to rush an album. This literally shows me that this label, maybe even her team, didn't fully see the vision. Because if the label and her team and everybody handling this rollout and this album believed in the overall vision, they would have given her the space to really hopefully complete this album and to just not rush out the era. Because as I said, Greedy could have lasted through the holidays. That album should have dropped the following year, maybe even in January. It would have been a better idea. But isn't it just crazy? Because when you think about the release of Greedy, 1 day off from the Grammy eligibility. 1 day off to be eligible. But it was eligible until the Grammy shifted the eligibility period. Now, any song that was eligible, that is no longer, now on the dates that they've decided to shift after, none of that shit matters. You're not eligible. Huh? Why aren't all the songs, and I was literally just saying this earlier at the beginning of the podcast, why do we not have anything in place for anything that you've released prior to us changing the rules? Because now we've now moved the goalposts. We've now made it harder for you to get these accolades that you have actually earned and achieved. What, is one saying that Tate McRae has earned a Grammy? No, she has earned the ability to be considered and nominated. She earned that right to have that, to be in a space to be considered for that. And they moved the goalposts after her breakout. And then get this, because here's the fucking kicker to me. This is the fucking kicker. Tate McRae cannot be eligible for Best New Artist because she has submitted the last 3 years. What? Years can go by with music and it can be nominated several years later, 3 to 4 years later. But you being considered 3 times, even though you were never nominated, you can no longer submit. So now she can't submit for Best New Artist after her substantial breakout, and her substantial breakout song cannot be considered for a nomination because they've decided to move the goalpost after artists have earned that. That was earned. that space that she's in right now to be considered where she's getting, these bigger numbers, more fame, you know what I mean? More opportunities. She has earned that. And it's not about the Grammys. It's not, there's so much weight in the Grammys. No, it's not really about any of that shit. But we can't sit here and act like that. There isn't weight in Grammys. There's weight in Grammys even when people who say, I can't stand the Grammys, you're still watching the Grammys. There's still some weight in the Grammys. Okay? Grammy-nominated artist, that holds weight in a lot of places. It does. We can't act like it doesn't. It does impact an artist's journey. So, I don't know. Hits like Greedy, they don't happen all the time. What gives me a bit more faith in regards to Tate's experience going forward is that when her album came out, we did see Run for the Hills chart. We did see X's chart. We did see Greedy chart. We saw all of those songs chart. Right? So, I do believe that she will find her way back to success. And at the same time, I don't know that she will find her way back to success because it's a gamble anytime that you release a song. You don't know what it's going to do. You don't know what it's going to be. You don't know if the label's going to back you. You don't know if these playlists are going to put you up in proper playlistings. You don't know. Literally a gamble. So you can't just be like, she'll get her another turn. Yes, that's me being hopeful. That's me being positive because I do believe that. But there is a reality of it. We know that. We see it every day. An artist can get a number one album and then an artist can never see a top 20, top 40 album again after that. You don't know. You can get a number one song, never touch Billboard again. There are so many variables here. But I just don't like the fact that they have played in Tate's face. That's very unfair. And I feel like that's something that has to be vocalized. I just don't know why people are not vocalizing how much the Grammys are impacting artists by what they do. You have the Grammys tweeting out that people won Grammys that never won a Grammy, even though that has never happened to anybody else except for the one and only. And you know who I'm talking about. Because who else did they do that to? Name them. Nope. Interesting. Okay. This is the same Grammys who Miley Cyrus hadn't had a nomination since Bangers, which is absolutely fucking crazy because it's Miley Cyrus. They just don't respect artists. They don't. And, some people do forget that. The Grammys isn't a thing on its own. The Recording Academy puts on the Grammys. And I think people really do forget that because they think that the Grammys is just a standalone thing, and it's not. That's not how that works. It's not like many other things. I mean, you could say, it's kind of like the VMAs in a way. MTV puts on the VMAs. Billboard puts on the BBMAs. You know what I mean? Like, the Billboard Music Awards, it's not just Billboard Music Awards. Billboard Music Awards is Billboard. It's Billboard celebrating Billboard. So, like I said, the industry is very nasty. I don't like what they're doing to my girl Tate. I mean, what can you do at that point except just work harder? That's literally the only option that you have, is to work harder, is to go harder. You have to let that stuff make you better. And I know it is. I know it's going to make Tate better. Because before this album, she was still eating. I've had a slow journey of growth with Miss Tate. It's true. I talked about it on my last podcast with her, where I really just talked about my journey with Tate and how I've been growing to love her. And oh my goodness, still to this day, I'm obsessed with her and I can't wait to see more from her. I feel like we didn't get enough from her album. She spent so much time promoting Greedy that I just don't feel like we got enough of the album. I don't feel like enough of it was brought to life. But personally, I thought that the album was a solid 7 out of 10. Genuinely. I thought it was a genuine and solid 7 out of 10. And that is such a good thing. And I need people to start waking that up. 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. Those are good ratings. They are. Again, I felt that the album was rushed. The album was rushed. Now, when I look in between the lines of this album, I see the greatness in it. I see the vision that she has for herself, and I do believe that she's going to execute it. I mean, after seeing Greedy, after seeing X's, you know what I mean? Like, obviously, Run for the Hills had to give us that range, but also at the same time, you know, the productions around these songs, and they're just so much different than when I listen to other songs like You Broke Me First, or what's the other song? I cannot remember the other song to say for the life of me, but is it Feel Like Shit? Yeah, it's Feel Like Shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, when I listen to Run for the Hills and I listen to Feel Like Shit, and then, you know, I listen to things like You, and there's so many different sounds of Tate prior to this album where I genuinely just feel like she is fitting into a mold, but she fits into the mold so well. And I just feel like she was just running along with what needed to be done until she got into a space to where she could do more so what she wanted to do. And as you see her do more so what she wants to do, you see the X's, you see the Greedy, and you see how it resonates more with the mainstream. So kudos to her. I think she has a long road ahead of her. The Grammys need to stop playing her fucking face. It's pissing me off because stop it. Stop moving the fucking goalpost. I know it don't make sense to y'all. There's no way it makes sense. And I'm going to say it again. If you're going to change the eligibility period, anything released and established prior should be valid. If it's not, you are cheating. You're just cheating. You are at this point. I'm sorry. Part of me wonders if they did that because of the fact that we have so many releases this year that they just simply put it as, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to move the period back so that way we can consider more. And then what we're like, I don't get it. I don't get it. You're going to move the eligibility period forward, but then also say you can't submit yourself for Best New Artist. Who gives a fuck if you've been considered 3 times? You weren't nominated. What the hell? Do you know how many times artists submit for a category that they've never won? But all of a sudden, she has submitted 3 times prior, so she can't submit to Best New Artist. Girl, fuck you. Oh, that's so nasty. Girl, anyway, look. That's really all I had to say. I wanted to come on here and I wanted to talk with y'all about the shifting of these periods and what they're doing behind the scenes to artists. Like, that's so nasty. No nashe. Stream her though. Girl. But I thank y'all for listening to this podcast. I really do. I want to have more artists in industry focused podcasts again. I've gotten away from that, and just because I've been splitting my time with doing the podcast, in real life stuff, constantly promoting the brand and myself, and actually working in the industry, and just a billion different things. My mind and my focus is in a billion different directions, but I'm coming back to these artists and industry focused podcasts. Starting with this one, I felt very strongly about this one. Okay? I think it's time for them to start giving Tate the respect that she deserves. I think she is disrespected. And in a way, and I'm not comparing it because, again, black women have it 10 times harder. But it also makes me think of how they disrespected Normani. You know, Normani and Sam Smith, Dancing with a Stranger, needed to be nominated for a Grammy nomination. But I'm willing to believe, and I do believe, bitch, that it wasn't nominated because she was on the song. But then you look on the opposing end and you have a song like Unholy with Sam and Kim Petras, and then that gets nominated. Weird. Everything about the Grammys is just weird in how they go about things and how they don't include everybody. They almost just like, you know what I mean? Like they are, in a way, a clique. And they only let certain people in their realm. And I don't like that, because I would like the Grammys to showcase all of the talent out there, because there is probably so much talent out there that's 10 times better than about at least 5 people that were nominated. But they didn't get the opportunity to be nominated because they weren't put on a platform. Even though all of this shit is on a streaming platform. And not everybody can submit their work, which is also dumb as hell. There's a lot of work that the Recording Academy needs to do. And I know that they probably think because of what they do year round, like, you know, giving back to the music community, teachers, and they help keep the arts going. The Recording Academy is important. But I think that they don't really understand how they treat the artists. They want to cater to the community of musicians and creatives, and again, keeping the arts going. But this is the same community that are going to become artists and the people that you may have nominated on your show. Some you may not even look their way because you didn't give them the opportunity. They don't have the resources, blah, 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 blah. The Grammys are going to have to be more inclusive. They're not. Not everybody can get a nomination. Sure, that's fine. But there are a lot of people who do deserve it. And right now, Tate is in that space where she deserves that nomination, as I said. And that's where I'm going to leave this at. Okay? So I would honestly keep voicing your support for Tate McRae very loudly. Because even though they may not respond, they may ignore it. But even if one person does see it, that does make a difference. It begins to have a ripple effect. So, girl, we wish for positivity and the best going forward with Miss Tate McRae, especially in this mainstream space as we come up on award show season. All right, y'all. Now, thank you so much for tuning into the That's Sowdev podcast. You're iconic. Make sure you go ahead and follow me on all social medias at That's Sowdev on Twitter, Instagram, and literally everywhere else. And yeah, especially YouTube. Make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe over there, because I know some of y'all are listening. And yeah, and just to give you a little heads up, because I know some people are confused about the podcast being on YouTube, but it's audio. So my podcast services to all platforms, so that way anybody and everybody has the ability to stream it. So these audio podcasts that are on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, whatever, if someone can't access that, I want it on YouTube for them. I've had people ask me to put it on YouTube, and that's what I'm going to do. Video podcasts will be coming by the end of the year, but I just want to clarify that because it seems like some people have some issues with that. Anyway, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I will see you guys on the next podcast. Peace.